Happy politics and welcome to probably the final Friday of our election coverage. I say probably for a reason I will get into shortly. Good teaser off the top. My name is Maclean K. I'm the editor-in-chief of The Orca, and this is an undisclosed location that is not my living room. I'm joined in a socially distant manner by...
Jordan Bateman, VP Communications for the Independent Contractors and Business Association. Also, this is not my living room either.
It's not? All this time I thought that you were just that branded.
Yes,
That'd be
well, we make the children. Hey, Maclean, first of all, can I just say I have some early election results. Are you ready? And I am thrilled with them. Congratulations to my two daughters who just won seats on their student council at Walnut Grove Secondary in Langley. For my grade 12, it is her 5th straight win. She's 5-0 in elections. Maclean, I was only 2-1, so,
wow,
better than me. And she's
no term limits at Walnut Grove, I see.
No term limits, and now she is half a step away. She's putting in her papers to be the president, and that gets all determined, so she's got a good chance of that. And then to my grade 9, who ran for re-election, she won in grade 8. Danica, good job. So yes, the campaigning. They moved to an online vote this year because, of course, socially distant voting, and turnout was the highest it's been in a few years. So there you go.
Wow. Well, congratulations to both of them.
The Russian bots I paid off clearly worked in getting them election. No, I'm just kidding.
Here I thought Bateman's excelled at mail-in ballots.
Yes, we know how to vote remotely.
Speaking of mail-in ballots and election results, we are recording this at 11 a.m. on Friday. At 10, Elections BC spoke to reporters about, what the next day and days will look like. The short end is that there's a really good chance we're not going to have, we won't have final results no matter what until the middle of November. But we may not know who wins tomorrow. In fact, there's a pretty good chance of that. Over 1 million British Columbians have already voted, as in their votes have already been received by Elections BC. That's about 400,000 mail-in ballots, and I think 600,000 in some advance. They expect there will be more mail-in ballots arriving today and tomorrow, so that number will continue to go up. That is not just a record, but, a huge record. And the simple fact is that counting mail-in ballots and advance ballots takes longer. And so, Elections BC spoke to us for half an hour, 45 minutes, but it all kind of boiled down to we don't know when we'll have final results. They keep saying it'll take probably more time than they figure, and fair enough.
Yeah, it took more time than they thought it would in the TransLink one. It took more time than they thought it would in the HST. So that doesn't surprise me. Look, there's an extra step involved, or a couple extra steps involved in these advance and mail-in ballots. First of all, you've got to open thousands and thousands and hundreds of thousands of envelopes. That just takes time. They have these big machines that have cutters, and they send the envelopes through and stuff like that. But those things can break down, they can slow down, whatever. So first they got to cut them all, then they got to certify the privacy ballot, make sure those are all legal. Then they cut all those. They got to go into the right ridings. If you're an advance voter, you could have voted at any poll in the province. Maybe you're an FSJ for work. If you're an FSJ for work, don't get used to it if the NDP get reelected. But you vote in Victoria or you vote in Nanaimo. You might have done an advanced poll in FSJ. They have to reroute those. It takes time for that to happen. The interesting will be for the decision desk people in all these little networks. They will love it. They will have, no doubt, kind of the numbers like, okay, there's still 10,000 ballots out there, floating out there for Vancouver, False Creek. Okay, so the lead's only 2,000, there's 10,000. Well, it's still mathematically possible for that person to come back. So there'll be a lot of, I think there'll be, a handful of, we feel pretty confident the seat has been won, outcomes, projections. But then there'll also be a big mushy middle of, leaning, should be. So that'll be interesting to watch. The Keith Baldrys of the world have to try to, dance on the head of that pin, very carefully, not, because none of them, the one thing that pundits hate is to come out and say things like, this guy could kick a dog and still win the election, and then, turn out to be wrong. So they will be I suspect, very guarded on election night.
Well, and we've never had an election, first of all, during a pandemic, but, conducted in this way, so many people voting advance or by mail that nobody really knows. There are no historical trends to look at in any meaningful way. So, yeah, you're right. Tomorrow night on TV and online is going to be a bit of a muddle, I think. We'll see. There's one funny anecdote. I mean, Elections BC briefings contain so few funny anecdotes that I do want to share this one. Somebody asked them about, why does it take so much longer? And, and the answer was basically, well, guarding against electoral fraud. Well, does that really happen? And they mentioned that in 2009, they found a case of somebody who voted 5 different times and and who then fled the country before they could be prosecuted, and
Vote
apparently
early,
has never come back.
Vote early, vote often, Maclean.
It does happen, I guess. And the problem is ensuring that if you have voted, in person on election day, that you did not also vote by advance in the mail, which also does happen. And so, it takes a long time to manually go through the voters list and every single vote that's received and make sure that there's only one per voter. Even if it happens by mistake, it can invalidate results. So, we're looking at mid-November.
That's true. Maclean, do you think we're going to see, so mail-in ballots basically went from less than 1% of the electorate last time to 20-ish% this time.
Yeah.
Sort of. Do you think this is now a feature of BC elections? Do you think this will continue on?
That got asked again today too, and their considered opinion is yes, that a lot of people will choose to vote by mail instead. I hope not. I hope that is not true. Well, for one thing, it makes the election more difficult to cover, and it makes election night less of an event, and for that alone. But also, I mean, I like going and voting. I like going to the polling station. I've never waited longer than a couple of minutes, with the one freak event here in Victoria aside, and that was an anomaly. I don't know. I feel good physically stuffing my ballot in the box. I still feel good about voting. I'm 44 years old. And so, I seem to be the minority on this. A lot of people think that voting by mail is easier, and that they think this will be a trend that will continue. I hope not.
The other thing you didn't mention is it makes campaigns matter less because, of course, people vote early on. I've never been an early voter because I'm always like, well, what if I was planning to vote for so-and-so and then they get, picked up in a kiddie porn ring the night before the election. I'd like to wait to have all the information before I go and cast my ballot, just in case.
Yeah, unless you're a locked and loaded voter.
But no one should be.
If you're watching this,
unless you're voting for yourself, you should not be a lock and loaded voter. You should at least be open to the possibility, right?
I agree completely, and that was going to be my point. I was going to say there's probably a disproportionate number of our audience that are locked and loaded voters on either side of the spectrum. Just by nature, if you're political, you're probably watching or listening to the show. But that's not the majority of people. Most people do swing back and forth between a couple different parties. I've voted for multiple different parties in my life. I don't think I'm abnormal in that respect. And I'm like you. I want to have all the information. I mean, think about the people that voted 2-3 weeks ago and all that's happened since then.
Yeah. Well, think about people who marked their ballot for Laurie Thronis before.
Yeah.
Were they voting for the BC Liberals? Were they voting for Laurie Thronis? Were they voting for both? That's think of Nathan Collin. If you voted early for Nathan Collin, you should really have a talk with yourself. It's emerged that he's got a bit of a pattern of this kind of behavior. So
other things evolved during the campaign. Let's say you're up in the north and you're a huge proponent of Site C. And you were feeling pretty good about the NDP. That they had gone yes with it and they backed it up. And then the last couple of days, John Horgan's been kind of walking it back, and it seems to me like he's kind of laying the groundwork for maybe pulling the plug after the election, of course. Boy, that would have been good information to have 3 weeks ago when I mailed in my ballot.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's something that he will be castigated for once he's in power. And the fact that he is not taking a firm position, politically, he should have just come out. And this is, if there's one thing about John Horgan we've learned in this campaign is he's not going to let facts get in the way of a good political argument. He should have come out and just shredded the BC Liberals for starting the process and, made it one of their messes that they're trying to clean up. Instead, he's very clearly now taking ownership of it. Well, I've appointed Peter Milburn and I've asked so-and-so for this and I've done that. And that's going to haunt him in that next window when the Vaughn Palmers of the world, get a hold of these reports, and they will, and they start pinning him to the wall. That would be a bit of an issue there. There's also the spiking COVID numbers.
Yes.
We set a record at 204. We're all like, oh my God, that's terrible. And then we hit 270 the next day. Not great. If you look at it, a lot of that's in Surrey, and there's a lot of talking to friends of mine in Surrey, talking to friends of mine in the Indo-Canadian community, they see a lot of coded language coming out of the NDP, coming out of Dr. Bonnie's office that sort of hints that it's kind of their fault. That is what their perception is. I'm not saying it's right or wrong, and I want to be clear on that, but that is what their perception is. If they come out right after the election, Dr. Bonnie lays the hammer down on, Surrey gatherings. It's kind of clear what, that she was holding back in for the sake of the electoral. It's for the sake of the election. So there's these kind of little undercurrents going on where. I do think one thing that's happened this election, if you believe the polls, John Horgan's going to win. If he wins, he will not have the honeymoon he had last time. The media, I think, has been tough as nails on him this time, as, frankly, they should have been for the past 3 years. Yeah. He really got a bit of a free ride, including during COVID. And I think there's no more of this Premier Dad joke, Star Trek nonsense that he's going to skate through on this stuff. He's going to be held to account. He's going to be held to account for Site C. He'll be held to account for radical giveaways to the unions. It will be a completely different tenor. I think it'll be more like that 96 term than what we've just come through. And he's going to be held to account. If First No doesn't win, I think a lot of people in British Columbia will lament the fact that there isn't a strong Green presence and no strong female leader in the House. I think that will stick to him as well.
Well, I mean, the Defence Hill, I don't want to prejudge the results there because I actually think they'll be quite close. But let's say that, First Now loses to, I think Rob Douglas is his name, the NDP candidate. Horgan will fall back on that. Well, are you going to argue with results? Take this up with the people of Cowichan Valley. Well, okay, yes, true. But you poured a disproportionate amount of time, energy, resources. You shipped Jagmeet Singh across the strait from Burnaby. I mean, this was...
No, he just randomly wandered into that riding. Maclean. John Horgan said he never asked that guy to show up. He just randomly moved into the one riding they want more than any other in the province.
It's So I mean, it'll just seem disingenuous.
Yes.
Yes, the voters voted that way, but I mean, you sunk a lot of time and energy into that.
You lied to the woman. You lied to her 3 years ago that you were going to go through to the end. You didn't tell her on the Friday before that you were going to shred the agreement. There's not going to be any grace for that. You lied, and that will, be what sticks to him from here on in. And look, anytime, and it happens to every politician, you make a promise and sometimes you have to break it. Every time that happens, it's going to go back to that, well, John Horgan lied. He lied and put us in danger in this election. And, the political headstone, and it's not a headstone, I just can't think of the better word, has changed now for John Horgan, right? How he will be judged and what people read into his actions will be totally different. Before it was, well, we'll give him the benefit of the doubt that he had to work with the Greens. And so he's trying to work with people. That was the benefit of the doubt that was given. That's not there anymore, barring some sort of, similarly bizarre result where the Greens hold the balance of power.
Yeah, well, and the other thing is, if they win, that's the last term they were able to go time and time again to, well, 16 years. They will now be an incumbent government with a record of their own to defend. I mean, I think the 16 years thing got a little tired a year ago, but it'll definitely be. You can only go back to so many times. And knowing the NDP, knowing any political party, they will go back to the well long after it's dry, in terms of the media and public's patience for it.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And then, look, there'll probably be a new BC Liberal leader. It might be a new party brand. A lot of those stalwarts will be gone. It's a completely new group. And they'll sit there and be like, 16 years ago, I was in high school, right? It just won't, it won't fit. It won't make any sense. So, during those 16 years. So there is, it'll be interesting. I see Horgan in this campaign as a guy who's gotten out over his skis quite a bit. And that kind of arrogance, you can control your temper. It's hard to control your arrogance when you have a majority government. And he has longed for this for so long. This has been his driving ambition in life for decades, to have a powerful NDP majority. So if he gets it, he's going to act like he has it And I think that will actually be a bad miscalculation by him.
Well, yeah, you're right. And it's been interesting in that all along, the NDP's most powerful asset politically has been Horgan himself. He's, personally liked the Premier Dad thing you just mentioned. A lot of people bought into that, the dad jokes. You could see the NDP leaning into it over the last 3 years, and who could blame them, because it's been successful. So much of his personal credibility has kind of taken a hit in this campaign. Starting with the, why we're doing it. I just decided on Saturday after meeting with Sonia, when I woke up with my wife, like, you had ads in the can.
Yeah.
It's not true.
Yeah.
And even people who vote NDP are kind of going, oh, God, just say you wanted a majority government. They kind of started to get to that towards the end, when they would start talking about, well, we need the stability, and we feel with COVID it's more important to do it now because things might get worse later. Had they just said that at the beginning, I mean, I also don't think that'd be true, but it's a more plausible, and it's less insulting than this. Oh, well, it's random, really. I woke up one morning and said go with the ads in the can. I mean, it's just. Yeah.
Well,
I don't understand why they didn't do that in the first place.
They couldn't say things are going to get worse with COVID next year, because Dr. Bondi keeps saying this is not forever. It's not forever. So that the last person they want to tangle with is her. Sure. But your point is well made, right? Like, just be honest. And that inauthenticity stuck to Horgan throughout this campaign. And, it's not something he'll be able to wriggle out of. I personally think that if he wins, it'll be his only majority government. I think he will step aside before the next election. I mean, he's not a spring chicken anymore. Who is? Not many of us. But, he's not, and there will come a time, there'll be scandals that attach, and bad decisions and giveaways and lining the pockets of friends and insiders and random appointments that will end up, causing him to move out, and hopefully, he'll take some baggage with him. And the David Eby's or Nathan Collins or whoever else, although I think Collins probably disqualified himself now, will try to take the party into the next election, I guess. This is a campaign where, what was the number? 1 million people voted already? Is that sort of the...
Yeah.
And only about 1.5 million people voted last time. But it just has felt like a campaign about nothing. It's because we are so preoccupied with COVID as a society and as individuals. Nothing has been able to penetrate that fog. And, the BC Liberals probably could have come out, if you believe the polls, and who knows. Like, I'm like you, I believe that it's much tighter than people say. And, I look at even the polls that show the NDP way ahead. It seems to be concentrated in certain areas with certain voter groups that don't generally turn out as much as others. So, I think there's a tightening. But, okay, like, you do wonder, like, for those certain groups, BC Liberals, like, will match every NDP promise plus 50%. I don't think, it just, there's something entrenched there that has to change, and I guess we'll see. Tomorrow. I hate making predictions. I'm always wrong on predicting elections. Always wrong. And certainly Trump over Clinton doesn't give anyone any confidence in predicting elections. And certainly, Clark over Dix doesn't give anyone any confidence in predicting elections. That's why I found, I was reading Rob Shaw's story this morning in the Sun. I'm like, oh boy, Shaw, like, this could be another crow-eating moment. But who knows?
Who knows? I will probably, I haven't started this yet, I'll probably do it this afternoon. Before the federal election last year, I did a best case, worst case for all the various parties. And I think that's kind of the best way to make predictions these days. It's silly. It's like going to a football game and saying, well, I think, BC is going to win 24-21. Come on. Why? But I think it is possible to sort of settle on a range of things that you could happen if, we've talked about this many times before. Parties to win government, especially in a place where it's usually as close as BC, need, more than 5 out of 10 close ridings to go their way. And, and sometimes they need something closer to 8. Other times they have a little more wiggle room. And so, I think there will be a difference between best case and worst case scenarios this time. And that's probably where I'll go. I mean, you look at the Greens. Yeah. Their worst case scenario is 0.
Yes. Yeah, and that is a distinct possibility. Wait, what ridings are you going to watch the most closely? Like, I'll give you a few that I'm going to watch.
Yep.
If it is an NDP landslide, I'll be interested where the firewall begins for the BC Liberals. Is it Surrey Cloverdale, the traditional firewall? Is it Langley, Mary Polak's riding? Is that the new firewall? Is it Langley East, Rich Coleman's old riding, now Margaret Kunst, or is it Abbotsford? Where is the firewall, for between the Lower Mainland and the rest of British Columbia? Obviously, you'll be looking at Skeena and Stikine.
Yep.
Both of those could go either way. I think the BC Liberals have the better candidate in both, but that doesn't necessarily, if it's a 17-point landslide as the Ipsos Reid poll suggests, then, you could have Wayne Gretzky running there. It's not going to help you much, or Elias Pettersson. So I'll be looking at that. I'm curious about Vancouver Falls Creek, Sam Sullivan's riding.
Which is always a close riding.
Always a close riding. And Sam has this kind of, it's hard for BC Liberals to win these Vancouver urban ridings, but Sam has this kind of quirky following, from being mayor and, from doing his, dialogue salons and idea things. That'll be interesting. Jane Thornthwaite's riding will be interesting. So those are the kind of ones that I'm waiting to see. And then, of course, Surrey Fleetwood in there. If you see a Surrey Fleetwood switch to BC Liberal, then you start getting interesting. Much like 2013, when Peter Fassbender was declared the winner in Surrey, that version of Surrey Fleetwood, everyone stopped and went, whoa. And I remember Mario Canseco being on CTV and him putting his hands up and going, this changes the entire calculus of this. And and
he was right.
He was right. So, anything can happen. I will say this. The polling shows 35 to 54-year-olds, both male and female, support the BC Liberals over the NDP. Now, Generation X has never flipped an election, never turned an election. There's a first time for everything. And 35 to 54-year-olds, if you think about it, those are your homeowners. Mm-hmm. Those are your people who are in probably the most credit card debt. They're probably the ones most concerned about losing an income. Or, if you've managed to maintain your job, but, no raises, maybe you've lost your bonus structure, maybe you've lost some benefits, your kids are in sports, but they're not really in sports because you can't go and watch them play hockey. There's a lot of bubbling undercurrent there, and I do wonder if that group is more motivated to come out to vote than normal.
Yeah, I agree, and it'll be fascinating to watch. You mentioned ridings to watch. The two green ridings, I think, will be. I'll say the three green ridings from 2017 will all be interesting.
Yes.
Oak Bay Gordon Head, which obviously was Andrew Weaver's riding, and then Adam Olsen and Sonny Verstenau's seat. I think Cowichan Valley might be the most closely watched riding in the whole province, to be quite honest. You mentioned Skeena, Stikine. North Island will be interesting. I mean, it's only earlier this year that riding had a crippling forestry strike. Now, if Claire Trevena was running again, I think it might be even tighter, but we'll see. Jazz Johal seat in Richmond Queensborough will be one they're going after, but also Ravi Kalon's seats in Delta. With Ravi is personally popular, but the Massey Tunnel Albatross is going to hurt him, I think.
Is he personally popular? Is he?
He seems to be well liked in the riding.
He parachuted into that riding last
True.
time. He doesn't have deep roots there. Maple Ridges, we should mention them, of course.
Yeah, I was going to get there. Yeah, because obviously a timely issue there. And Maple Ridge has kind of become the 21st century Kamloops and the sort of the bellwether, It's not Kamloops anymore.
Yes, well, John Horgan keeps handing over, saying he's going to do things for Kamloops, but really means Kelowna. Sorry, Bob Price. I know that gets under.
That's a joke that rubs the wrong way in Kamloops.
Yeah,
I know that.
Yeah, and it goes back to the 90s or something. The cancer center got promised to Kamloops, and then the NDP got elected and built it in Kelowna.
Yeah, this was something I was new to BC at the time. I remember sitting down with Terry Lake and him explaining this to me. Like, the Kamloops-Kelowna rivalry is a thing, and it's a one-way rivalry. Like, Kamloops can't stand Kelowna because Kelowna gets everything, and Kelowna's like, what do you mean? Kamloops? Everyone loves us. We're Kelowna. We like Kamloops.
We're the capital of the Okanagan. What are you talking about? Of course we get it.
It's kind of like it sounded like the Toronto-Hamilton rivalry, where Hamilton hates Toronto with every fiber of its being, but Toronto's kind of like, Hamilton?
Yeah.
Why? What are they upset about?
Yeah. Plus, you have those two great Western Hockey League teams, right? The Blazers and the Kelowna Rockets.
Yep.
Now they've got long history. Like, they hate each other. Like, it's a legit thing. So, yeah.
So we'll see.
But it still comes up. It's hilarious. Every election cycle, the NDP leader goes to Kamloops, and the first question they're asked is, "You realize we're not Kelowna, right?" And John Horgan, by the way, John Horgan lied about when he was in there last time. He said, I don't feel like I need to answer for stuff from the 1990s. I was involved in that. Actually, John, you and Megs and Adrian Dix were involved in that in the back room. So, yes, if you're going to hang the BC Liberals for 16 years, you got to hang yourself for your 90s, the 90s government.
If you're going to pile on Sam Sullivan, Michael Lee, I'm trying to think of newer MLAs for the last 16 years.
Jazz Johal, that noted the 18-day cabinet minister after the 2017 election.
Well, do you want to make predictions? I don't. I hate making predictions. I don't think that's...
Yeah, I don't want to make predictions. I'll tell you some funny stories on the ground here in Langley East. So Langley East, reliable BC Liberal riding under Rich Coleman, nicknamed Coleman Country, had a stranglehold on it for years and years, retired. Margaret Kunst was appointed. She's a township councillor. She slipped up and made a procedural vote against a rainbow crosswalk, which, in my opinion, was a dumb move to make. But what are you going to do? Just vote for the rainbow crosswalk. That's what you do. Anyways, that happened. But the person who wanted that nomination is one of her rivals on township council. He really hates her guts. His name is Eric Woodward. He, of course, did not get the BC Liberal nomination. She did. And then, in the meantime, he jumped over to the NDP and had that scuttled when the Kwantlen First Nations and other folks came out and said, you don't want this guy. Anyways, yesterday, fascinating Langley Times wrap. So, you can buy the wrap around a newspaper, which is good. Which is a good thing to buy as an advertiser, because if most people are like me, a former community newspaper reporter, I pick up the Langley Times, Advanced Times, and as I'm walking it to the recycle bin, I look at the front page and that's about it. Anyways, he clearly had planned to buy this wrap because he had bought the wrap had the NDP candidate on the front cover. You opened it up, inside the front cover, the Conservative candidate. And then the back two pages were the Eric Woodward Foundation, which is a charitable, and I use that loosely, group that he has organized. So clearly, now this is the second wrap we've had in Langley during this campaign. The first one had 2 pages of the NDP candidate on the front, and the back was 2 pages of the Conservative candidate. So very clearly, Eric had bought both wraps and has either repackaged or sold it. I hope he has sold it at market rates, otherwise Elections BC is going to come calling, to these candidates. So interesting to watch that unfold. It's just one of those little things that happen on the ground. Only Langley people get it, but and only really hardened political type people like me would notice it. But it was a fascinating thing to see the cooperation between the NDP and the Conservatives as they try to topple a BC Liberal.
It's funny you mentioned that story. I had completely forgotten about that whole saga with Eric Woodward, which I think just goes to show how much oxygen has been swallowed up by the pandemic in this campaign. We talk about how there's been a lot of talk about how, well, nothing's happened, nothing sticks. This was a city councillor who lost out on one party's nomination, successfully got the main rival nomination, and lasted, 24 hours, 48 hours?
Yeah.
That's an astonishing story. It doesn't matter which parties are which.
Yeah.
It's a great story.
Yeah.
And it's been completely forgotten.
Yeah. Oh, and in the meantime, like the Kwantlen First Nation has come out and rejected his offer. His foundation technically, apparently owns some of the lands that he has put together in Fort Langley. He wanted to give it to or partner with the First Nation so they could get around township bylaw and rezoning rules. And the First Nation said, no, keep your free land. We don't want it. We value our relationship with the township and with our neighbors. So, you couldn't even give away land. Like that's where we're at now with in Fort Langley and Langley. So it's interesting. I think Margaret's going to win. Who knows? I mean, I can't tell. You don't get riding by riding polling like this anymore. But, at least, Derek's credit, he's holds a grudge. He's out there coordinating. I noticed the Green Party candidate didn't get a chance to get in on that deal. So,
well, the Highlander in me is moderately impressed to hold a grudge that long, but still, man, that's not a long-term winning strategy.
Yeah. Look, there's elections come in phases. Like election cycles happen. I think it was Margaret Thatcher said, "No victory is final, no defeat is forever." Right? Things happen. The BC Liberals, yes, they were in power for 16 years, but before that, it was the NDP for 10, and before that, it was Bill Bennett's so-creds for 16. So these things come in waves. no defeat is final. No victory is forever. Things will happen. I do wonder, we have, I do wonder going forward, and there'll be time to talk about this after, but, if the polls held and it was a landslide and Andrew Wilkinson resigns and the Liberals then have an opportunity to rebrand themselves probably, I suspect that might be the last election under the BC Liberal banner. It's just...
Oh, really?
Well, I mean, it's too tied up now with Trudeau. Trudeau revived the Liberals, and not in a great way for a lot of British Columbians. So, why wouldn't you? If you're trying to break from the past, whoever the new leader is, I think probably needs to come from outside that 16-year dynasty. And the first thing they need to do is basically on everything that party puts out, they need to rebrand it and make it clear it's under new management. Put it on the official opposition front door under new management. You've got to kind of step aside from that. And then it becomes about candidate recruitment and doing what, Bill Bennett and Grace McCarthy did in the 70s, doing what Christy Clark and Mike McDonald did before 2013, driving around BC, meeting folks, recruiting the best candidate who can win, who's the candidate who can win in, Stikine or wherever, you have empty ridings. And that takes time. Now, there is a municipal election in 2022. So my understanding is the way the BC election law is written, we have an election in October 2020. If it's a majority, the fixed election date is October 2024, correct?
I believe so. Although, fixed election date now. Yes.
Yeah, and one suspects that if there's a majority that you go to your, you're not going to call.
Oh, yeah, barring some disaster, yes.
Totally. Barring another global pandemic that changes everything, I guess. So right at the midway point, you have municipal elections. So, a new leader for the BC Liberals might be out there, working with candidates, getting them into municipal races as kind of a practice run, getting them some experience on more seeing who's got the right, who's got the hooch to go for the bigger jobs.
And just get their name out there, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So, there's kind of opportunities there. Governing parties usually don't do that because, of course, they have more incumbents. They don't have time. They're busy running a province. Their folks are, the places where they don't have MLAs aren't really strongholds for them anyways. So there's some interesting possibilities there. I'm not one of these people who is oh man, if the BC Liberals get 33 seats or whatever, it's over. Humanity has ceased to exist. Nothing is forever. The NDP will have plenty of enemies and bad policies, and we'll hold them.
It's not that long ago people were talking about the Federal Liberal Party like they were a relic from history, after Stéphane Dion, Michael Ignatieff. And people talked about the NDP and Thomas Mulcair becoming them and the Conservatives becoming the big two. I know Stephen Harper certainly thought that might be the case, or hoped that might be the case anyway. And obviously that didn't happen. So you never know.
Yeah, and look, if you're starting to look outside, caucus and outside politics, there's lots of interesting people who could run and, who could put on a very credible leadership campaign. I don't think the answer is Diane Watts. No offense to Diane, but, Diane is in her 60s now. I think.
Is she in her 60s?
Yes,
Man,
I believe so.
I did not know that.
Yeah, and look, Diane's has had an outstanding political career, but she didn't love party politics when she was with the Conservatives. And I think it's far more likely she takes out the McCallum, cleans up after McCallum one more time. She's done it before. But so there's all these kind of little threads going on. But the main thing is, wherever you are, whoever you are, if you haven't voted yet, get out and vote on tomorrow. I haven't voted yet. I'm going tomorrow. Cast your ballot. And then, in mid-November when all the chips or all the cards are flipped over and we know what's going on, we go from there.
Yeah, I think that no matter how you intend to vote and which party you are affiliated with, if any, the one thing I think we can all agree on is that, please vote. Yeah. And then I have been a big believer in the tired old cliche, but I still believe it, that if you don't vote, don't complain. You're going to get...
Yeah. I will argue with you on that, Maclean. Whether you vote or not, it's your right to complain as a taxpayer.
Well, fair enough, but I'm going to take your complaining less seriously. How about that? If you were I didn't vote, because they're all the same.
One of the greatest journalists and commentators in British Columbia history on politics has never cast a ballot in a BC election. Should Vaughn Palmer be forbidden from complaining?
Vaughn has never voted?
It's what you told. I hope it's not a secret. I don't think it is. He
takes
his independence so fiercely he doesn't vote.
Wow.
Yeah.
I believe you. I didn't know that. Or
Yeah.
if I did, I'd forgotten.
Or it's just a story
wow.
he told a bunch of young journalists one day. I don't know. But no, Vaughn has not voted to my knowledge yet.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
I mean, wow.
So if I'm,
okay,
but
fair
so
enough.
so the caveat for you would be if you're the columnist at a major daily newspaper, you don't have to vote. You still get to
Yeah.
complain.
But Joe and Jane Public vote.
Look, if you don't want to vote, if you don't like any of these people, just go and spoil your ballot. Like, still show up, still do it. You know, cross them all out, draw little swear words in all their bubbles, whatever you want to do. Like, you know, at least still go out and do it.
Yeah, no, I actually agree with that. I think spoiling your ballot is a legitimate last option if you are that disgusted. I would support that as well.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's been it's been a long campaign. I feel exhausted by the nonsense on Twitter. I'm looking forward to having a break. I think, I think after Election Day, after the Sunday, I think every pundit, reporter, and whatnot, political person should take 14 days off Twitter until they start counting the mail ballots. Like, just shut up. Like, let's just clear the field. And for one thing, I don't want to be on Twitter on a U.S. election night. But anyways.
Oh, God, no. Why would you do that to yourself?
Yeah.
I avoid it now even during the debates.
Yeah.
It's just no. I can't even articulate how gross that makes me feel. But yes, now we're going to talk again on Tuesday, you and I think for Hot Stove.
Yeah.
I don't know if it'll be about results. I hope so, because it'll give us more to talk about.
There's going to be some results. Maybe Monday or Tuesday.
We'll know some things, I think. At least some seats we'll know who's won or lost. Like I'm pretty sure, for example, we'll know that Andrew Wilkinson has won his seat. And we'll know that Adrian Dix or as Melanie Mark is the big landslide seat in Vancouver. She'll have won her seat. Those kinds of things. But will we know, some of the seats we mentioned to watch? I don't know. Probably not.
Probably not. No. Let's do it Monday because I'm away Tuesday.
Okay, Monday it is. All right. Well, until then, until Monday, and maybe with results, he's Jordan Bateman. I'm Maclean K. This is BC Poly Hot Stove. Happy politics.